Jack Hebert lived upstairs in apartment 2B. The room was 16 by 16 feet, quite sufficient for his needs. The beige carpet was only 12 by 16 feet and ran the length of the room, but ended 4 feet from the small kitchen. The owner laid some pretty good linoleum tiles there. The linoleum continued into the small bathroom. Jack placed a simple bath mat in the small bathroom, and the small mat almost took up all the available floor space. But that was enough for him. He didn't need much. He didn't want much. Jack Hebert certainly didn't want the 3,200-square-foot house his wife insisted on. At first, he objected. There were only 3 of them. He, she, and their 16-year-old daughter. They just didn't need that much space. Moreover, Deirdre will most likely move in 2 years. The girl didn't talk about anything other than going to Florida State University after seeing a photo of the campus. But, as usual, Jack gave in and paid 25% of the down payment, $5,500. Then, 2 years after Deirdre moved in, Jacqueline said the usual things to him. "We've grown apart. It's not about you, it's about me, and this will help us connect again." He wondered how a 47-year-old woman taking a 31-year-old lover was going to help their relationship. But to Jacqueline's surprise, Jack didn't give in this time. "You'll be left with nothing," she screamed, her usually sweet face twisting into an ugly grimace when he told her he was planning to move. "So be it. At least I won't end up with a wrinkly old slut," he said, and finished packing his suitcase. Miller Electronics sold him equipment. It was easy to hide throughout the large house. Jacqueline was not very meticulous in cleaning the house, not very attentive to her surroundings. He learned that Jacqueline's lover was a teacher at Baylor Lake High School. That's how they met. Brian taught English and Jacqueline was the librarian. Jacqueline and Brian thought Jack should just go along with their plan. They would have fun, and then Brian would go back to his wife and Jacqueline to her husband. But Jack Hebert did not become chief accountant in the St. Elizabeth Utility Company due to sloppiness. He became the chief accountant thanks to his thoroughness and accuracy. As planned, Brian and Jacqueline went to the Sweet Peas for a catfish fried dinner that night, and Brian's parents were there, sitting at the table. Confused, Brian introduced Jacqueline as a work colleague. "Where is Michelle?" Brian's mother asked urgently. She's at home with the girls," Brian stammered. "Yes, she told us," his father responded sharply. "Said you had some kind of parent-teacher conference or something at school tonight." Yeah, we really did. But we had a little break, so we decided to get something to eat," Brian stuttered. "Yeah," both of Brian's parents said, making it clear that they didn't buy his lame excuse. After a silent dinner, the not-so-loving couple went to Foxtrot's lounge to dance. Jacqueline loved to dance, but Jack didn't like it. He had both left feet. And Jacqueline's mother and stepfather danced at Foxtrot. "Yes, honey, your husband gave Roger a couple $100 here. Told him to bring me here to dance and drink," her mother giggled. She then looked at Brian and raised an eyebrow. But what are you doing here?" she asked her daughter. "We, Jack doesn't really like dancing, so, Jacqueline stuttered. "Come on, Monique, they're playing our song," Roger insisted. "That's not our song, you stupid old fool," Monique laughed, but allowed herself to be pulled back to the dance floor. But Jacqueline was determined to go through with her affair, if anything, if only to show her long husband that he couldn't ruin her evening. Brian loved it. Dinner and dancing were only a means to an end. "Damn, nice house," Brian whistled as he pulled up to the Baylor Lake home on the South Shore. "Thank you," Jacqueline croaked. They walked into the house and Brian generously squeezed Jacqueline's saggy ass. "Hello, Brian," Michelle said, sitting on the living room couch. What? What are you doing here?" Brian almost shouted. "Oh, I thought I'd show your wife and your daughters where you'll be living," Jack Hebert said as he walked into the room with a box of things. "Hi, Jacqueline. I just came by to pick up some of my things." "I already told you yes," Michelle whispered. her voice quiet and controlled. I already told you, after Stacy, I said that's it. This is the end. The pregnant woman stood up from the overly soft sofa, walked up to Brian, and punched him hard in the face. Well, it looks like you have a lot to talk about, so I'll go, Jack smiled. The girls really like the pool. Creature, Jacqueline hissed at the smiling Jack. Yeah, by the way, you owe Danny $12 for babysitting Millie and Mandy tonight, Jack said, pointing to the girl next door who was splashing around in the pool with two girls. Then he left the house. They had nearly $84,000 of equity in the house. Jacqueline screamed, cried, and begged Jack to forgive her. She didn't want to lose the house or the nearly $17,000 she had spent on furniture. Her brand-new Mercedes-Benz was still on loan for 3 years. Jacqueline begged and cried, asking Jack to forgive her. She knew she couldn't pay for the car with her salary. And she nearly fainted when Parker Johnson, her lawyer, broke the news. Jacqueline had to pay half of Deirdre's tuition and living expenses while she was in college. She also found it quite difficult to make ends meet on her public school librarian's salary. Oh no, honey, Monique laughed softly as Jacqueline approached her mother with the idea of moving in with them. But that's just until I can, began Jacqueline. Honey, this is a 2-room apartment, Roger said. I'm so grateful your dad didn't live to see this, Monique said. She looked at her daughter with her usual raised eyebrow look. Remember, Monique asked, you brought home that boy Jack Hebert, and your father told you that boy was a snake in the grass. God, how surprised he would be to find out how wrong he was. Their eldest, John Jr., called his father. Dad, Mommy is asking if she can stay with us, JJ said. Son, if you have a place, then, of course, let him stay, Jack said. Well, I just don't want any trouble, JJ admitted. Son, this woman changed your diapers, took care of you, fed you all these years. If you have room, let her in, Jack said. Love you, Dad, JJ said. Michelle Melankin remained true to her word. She did not forgive Brian for his attempt at flirting. Brian found it impossible to live on half his salary and eventually returned to live with his parents. But at least the living arrangements gave Brian's parents plenty of time to spend with Amelia and Amanda, their 2 granddaughters, and when Michelle gave birth to Barry Melankin, named after her father, they saw him often as well. Barry? I thought we were going to name it after me, Brian complained. We were going to, Michelle replied sharply. But your betrayal has convinced me that there is no longer a we between us. Jack originally intended the apartment to be a temporary solution, but found that he liked not having to spend hours mowing the lawn, raking leaves, mulching the garden, planting flowers, or cleaning the pool. He discovered that he liked not having to change the wallpaper, paint the spare bedroom, or rip out the old carpet. Jack discovered that he liked not having to clean out the garage, attic, or tool shed. There was a closet in his apartment. He found that it could easily accommodate 12 suits, 12 shirts, and 24 ties. There were also 3 pairs of shoes, a long coat, and a short jacket. The small chest of drawers in the closet was big enough to hold his 4 pairs of jeans, 12 pairs of underpants, 12 pairs of socks, and 4 t-shirts. The furniture was minimalist. Jack had his favorite rocking chair, 2 bookshelves, a small table and 2 chairs for the dining area, and a full-size bed. He didn't even have a TV. He briefly thought about using the TV in Deirdre's room, but couldn't think of any TV shows he wanted to watch. Jack Hebert was a big Saints fan, but Red Sports Bar had a 61-inch LCD TV and cold beer and crazy hot chicken wings and cold beer and jalapeno nachos and cold beer. If he really wanted to watch a TV program, he could use his laptop. He discovered that he liked to cook. Jacqueline always yelled at him for making a mess when he tried to cook. But here, it was either microwave frozen dinners or learning to cook. That's how he learned to cook. Jack was returning home one evening. A coworker gave him a new fried chicken recipe, and he happened to have chicken legs when he happened to look at a colorful building. Jack drove the same route day after day, passing this building day after day. Why he decided to look at him at that particular moment was unclear to him. The curtains were open. He looked at the glass window of the Kizzy Dance School, and inside there were 7 couples, swirling and gliding. The sound of a car horn brought him out of his trance, and Jack turned and pulled into the building's parking lot. Then he sat in the car and watched. He watched as an attractive young woman with a beatific smile on her pretty face showed them some basic moves, then motioned for them to start again. Although he couldn't hear the music, the smooth movements of the dancers filled Jack's head with music. Then the class seemed to end. Some couples stayed to chat. Others walked out into the twilight and got into their cars. Jack made a decision and got out of the car. "Hi, do you need help?" The young dance instructor smiled, separating herself from the elderly couple. "Yes, I'm not a couple, but do you teach individually?" "God, it was so beautiful watching them dance," Jack stuttered, now wondering why he was here. Kizzy smiled wider and took his nervous hands into her warm ones. "Today is your lucky day," she insisted. "Okay," Jack said, not feeling particularly lucky. "Let's see what we can do," Kizzy said, pulling him towards the counter. He agreed to enroll in her 12-week program and promised to be there on Wednesday night. 6 o'clock, and I'll introduce you to your dance partner, Kizzy said, handing him the receipt. "Oh, it really is my lucky day," Jack smiled. Even as he prepared dinner, Jack couldn't help but hum the music he heard in his head as those couples danced before his eyes. Jack met Jacqueline Adams at Cabrini High School. She and her family had just moved from Stepping Stone, Louisiana, so her father could start working at the Baggett mattress factory. She was cute enough, but she didn't stand out among the other beauties at Cabrini High. Jack Hebert didn't exactly stand out among the Cabrini High School elite. He wasn't particularly handsome, wasn't particularly rich, wasn't particularly athletic. He didn't have a good car, didn't have a poetic soul, and couldn't dance. But he was smart. After weeks of being ignored by the upper echelon of Cabrini High School, Jacqueline Adams was ecstatic when Jack Hebert quietly suggested she go to Jade Garden Chinese restaurant. After her father declared Jack Hebert a snake in the grass, a dog on the loose, Jack went up several notches in Jacqueline's eyes. Cabrini was hosting the fall formal and Jacqueline was waiting for Jack to invite her. As the day of the event drew closer, she finally asked him when he was going to invite her. "I don't know how to dance," he admitted to the girl. So she went with Joe Manzella, and suddenly Jacqueline and Joe became a couple. Jack was a little disappointed, a little offended. He was also practical. They were 18 years old. They were free to date whoever they wanted. In a few months, he would be leaving for the University of Southwestern Louisiana in Lafayette, Louisiana, and Jacqueline could go anywhere, and they would probably never see each other again. But Joe Manzella's mocking grin still angered Jack. "Hey, Hebert, how are you?" Joe taunted. "Oh, I'm fine, Manzella. How's Gina doing?" Jack asked, referring to Joe's older sister, who had a rather dubious reputation. Joe was tough, but Jack was smarter. Joe swung at Jack and Jack dodged, causing Joe to slam his fist into the cinder block wall. "Ooh, that must hurt," Jack chuckled as Joe looked at his swollen arm in horror. Jacqueline tried to hook up with a couple of other guys to make Jack jealous, then admitted defeat and went back to him. She didn't go to the winter formal or the spring formal. Jack Hebert couldn't dance. 29 years later, in apartment 2B, Jack was looking forward to learning to dance. It was Wednesday and Jack was wearing his burgundy shoes, a medium brown suit, a light blue shirt, and a burgundy tie. The burgundy shoes were his most comfortable pair. "I'd swear it's Wednesday," Jill, one of the HR administrative assistants, commented as Jack walked past her cubicle. Yeah, it's Wednesday," Jack said. "No, Wednesday is dark blue day, the young woman smiled. With your blue and gray tie, or your blue tie with yellow dots. Not like that anymore, Jack smiled. We're going to diversify a little bit. Is this a new suit? Asked Rhonda, another accountant. No, it's his Friday suit, said Bill, one of the employees. Oh, Rhonda said, looking at Jack in confusion for a moment, and then went back to studying her computer screen. No, Bill, look, he was stuck on something. Won't let me go to the next page. While the costume change had caused a slight commotion in the office, Jack's departure 20 minutes early had almost caused panic. He headed to Tommy's Po' Boys, a small restaurant near the dance school, and almost ordered his usual dish, a ham and cheese sandwich with olive dressing. No, you know what? Give me a big shrimp. Yes, there is hot sauce on the table. Yes, give me shrimp and Coke, Jack ordered. He ate his sandwich happily, checked his watch again, and then walked into the next building. He nervously sucked on a mint and retreated from the other customers. They were all in pairs. Great, you're here. Kizzy smiled brightly when she saw Jack. I want you to meet Michelle Melanchon, your partner. She was 7, almost 8 months pregnant the last time Jack saw her. All he remembered about her was that she was a sweet and plump young woman with 2 very beautiful girls, and that her beautiful face was stained from crying and then red from anger. Michelle Melanchon was 4 feet 11 inches tall and probably weighed about 170 pounds. Her little face was round, her mouth was like a button, her nose was a little knot on her face, and her big brown eyes were round. Her bright orange hair was tightly curled. She wore them quite short. Her breasts were definitely larger than the palm of her hand. Her stomach had not completely lost fat after pregnancy. Her hips were round, and her ass was also round. The tight jeans made her thighs look thick. Michelle Melanchon was around everywhere. Hey, Bubbles, Jack said without thinking as he greeted her. And she burst out laughing. Why do you call me that? She laughed. I don't know, he admitted, blushing a little as they were now the center of attention for the other couples. That's the first thing that came to mind. He learned that her parents had paid for 12 weeks of dance lessons for her. It was a way to get her out of the house for a couple of hours. But when Michelle showed up for her first lesson, Kizzy admitted they didn't have any male partners for her. This was normal for Michelle. She sat and watched the class, admiring their movements. Then Kizzy messaged me and told me to come here this Wednesday, Michelle said happily. Jack was sweating by the end of the first period. Halfway there, he had to take off his jacket. Michelle then lifted her small hand, loosened his tie, and undid the first button of his shirt. She didn't think twice. She just raised her hand and did it. That's better, isn't it? She asked as they started dancing again. Relax, Jack. Let the music move you, Kizzy encouraged. When the lesson ended, Michelle grabbed his hand. Will you be here next week? Please say you will. I had so much fun, she said cheerfully. Did you have fun? Dancing with such an old man. He smiled, picking up his jacket. You're not old, she said. Twice your age, he countered. Yeah, so what? She said. I'll be here, he smiled. While dancing with her, he tried to look into her big brown eyes. But from time to time his gaze fell on her impressive breasts. Then he realized what he was doing and quickly looked at her again. And she smiled at him with a warm smile, and he blushed. But when she ran out of the building, he saw her big ass in tight jeans. As if she felt his gaze on her, Michelle turned to the door and smiled broadly at him. Did you have fun? Asked Kizzy. You know, I actually did just that. I mean, I know I'm terrible at it, but I really had fun, Jack admitted. First of all, you're not that bad at this. You're new at this, another woman said. And secondly, dancing is fun, her partner said. Take care of number 2, and number 1 will take care of himself. I couldn't have said it better myself, Kizzy agreed. The next morning, Jack went into his closet for his Thursday suit and then decided that he would wear his Wednesday suit instead. "Now I'm completely lost," Jill teased as he walked down the hallway. He simply smiled. His cell phone vibrated, and he saw it was JJ, so he answered it. "Dad, listen, Shauna," JJ muttered into the phone. "Is your mother driving you crazy?" Jack guessed. "Yeah, did you hear that the school let her go?" JJ asked. "No, they didn't," Jack breathed. "Yeah, and that guy Brian too," JJ said. "Wow," Jack said. "Why? I mean, did she say why they let her go?" "No, trust me, I asked, but all she said was that she didn't want to talk about it," JJ said. Jack recognized this statement. Jacqueline said this whenever she painted herself into a corner. She just said she didn't want to talk about it, and she repeated this statement until the case was finally dismissed. "And as for Shauna, the baby is coming here in a couple of months and—" JJ. Continuation. "Okay, I'll talk to her," Jack sighed. They met in the Jade Gardens. Jack couldn't help but smile sadly. Apparently, Jacqueline thought it was a date. She wore quite heavy makeup, squeezing her flabby body into the low-cut dress. A year earlier, Jack would have been delighted to see her in this dress. He'll be excited about the possibility of sex later. Today, the outfit looked sad and shabby on an older woman who was not aging gracefully. "Well, you look good," he said friendlily and sat down opposite her. "Thanks, and you look, this is a new suit," Jacqueline noted. "Yeah, I wore the wrong suit the other day, and everyone nearly died of surprise," Jack laughed. "I realized I was becoming too predictable, so I gave all my old suits to Goodwill and bought all new ones." "It must be nice," Jacqueline said caustically. "Yes, nice," Jack agreed good-naturedly. The waitress came over and demanded to know if they were ready to order. "You know what, Jacqueline, I know exactly what you'll order. You always order the same thing," Jack said. "But I'll bet you $1,000 that you can't tell her what I want." She looked at him for a long time, trying to remember what he usually ordered. "Are you ready to order?" the waitress demanded again. "She'll have a side of spring rolls and sweet and sour pork, right?" said Jack. "That's right," Jacqueline confirmed. "And I want a glass of iced tea, sweet, and kung pao chicken, and fried rice," Jack finished his order. "How are you doing?" Jacqueline asked. "I'm fine," Jack replied. "Everything is fine at work. I have a small bachelor apartment. As I already said about my new suits, they've gone up in price since the last time we bought new suits, and Rhonda just announced she's pregnant, so I'll be looking for a temporary replacement. And you?" The waitress slammed the sweet iced tea in front of him, and Jack nodded politely. He listened as Jacqueline complained about losing her job, how hard it was to live with JJ, and his wife. Shona didn't seem to like her very much. Deirdre was still mad at her, but at least Penelope and Percy were kind to her. "But none of them say they have a place," she ended her story of woes. "So find your own place. You're a grown woman," Jack said as the waitress placed the food in front of them. "How? My beauty," Jacqueline answered sharply. "I just told you that I lost my job." "Well, if you can't use your beauty, then try your charm," Jack suggested. "Fuck you, Jack," Jacqueline snapped. "Just eat," Jack said. "Damn, every time I order this, it seems hotter than the last time." When Jack ordered a bowl of chocolate ice cream for her and a bowl of Neapolitan ice cream for himself, Jacqueline brought up the prospect of getting back together. "Not just no, hell no," he smiled, even as she leaned forward to offer him a view of her sagging breasts. "But why?" she almost screamed. "To sit and wait for the next time you say we've grown apart, and it's not me, it's you. You just need a little excitement. It doesn't mean anything. It's just sex. Will it strengthen us as a couple?" Jack asked, scooping up ice cream with a spoon. Jacqueline seriously considered throwing her ice cream at him onto his new suit. The waitress returned and slammed the bill onto the table. Jack quickly checked the paper and placed his credit card on the small tray. The dissatisfied woman immediately took it away. Maybe it was the hormones, Jacqueline suggested. I'm getting older. My periods are becoming less frequent. And instead of going to Dr. Pellier, you decided to sleep with another man, Jack said, signing the bill, adding exactly 15% of the tip. But he was so understanding, unlike you, always so busy, and Brian. Jacqueline continued to complain. I've always been so busy with all this crap you decided needed to be done right now, Jack said, standing up. I was always too busy driving our daughter around. He shook his head regretfully. You know what I didn't hear? I heard all this crap. It's my fault. It's hormones. Brian listened to you, Jack said. But I never heard Jacqueline say she was sorry. I never heard Jacqueline say it was her fault. But I'm sorry, Jacqueline said quickly. JJ and Shauna need this bedroom for their baby, Jack said. So you need to find yourself a small apartment or something. And St. Elizabeth's courtroom has a program to help you find a job. Use it. Jacqueline burned another bridge behind her. When she returned to the small house where JJ lived, and Shauna, she screamed at Shauna, calling the girl a bitch. Thanks, Dad, JJ said, with bitterness in his voice on the phone. Nah, I talked to your mom and told her you need this room for the baby, Jack countered. What did she say or do after that? It's already on her conscience. When Jack walked into the St. Elizabeth's Public Utilities office on Friday, wearing an unusual outfit of khakis and a button-down shirt, it almost caused panic. But when Jack walked out of his office at 5:10 the following Wednesday evening wearing tight blue jeans, a light blue t-shirt and loafers, his suit slung over his shoulder, it caused a slight seismic shaking in the building. And you leave 30 minutes early? Rhonda asked. Go, Jack, encouraged Garrett, one of the employees. At Tommy's, Jack ordered a fried oyster po' boy and a Coke. After he finished his meal, he agreed that the hot ham sandwich with olive dressing was still his favorite. But hey, you won't know until you try, he said out loud. Michelle was waiting for him and smiled widely as she ran up to him. This looks so much more comfortable than that boring old suit, she complimented, stroking his arm. Hi, Bubbles, you look good too, he smiled. She laughed with joy at being called Bubble. He was much more relaxed and really enjoyed the lesson. Well, back to the kids, Michelle said as Kizzy congratulated everyone on a great lesson. I'm sure Barry is hungry by now. Barry? Oh, yes, baby, Jack smiled. How are the kids? Millie really asks more and more why we can't live with Daddy. Mandy also starts whining about it, but only because Millie whines, and if Barry has a dry diaper and has breasts, he's happy, Michelle admitted. She winked at him as his eyes involuntarily went to her large breasts. See you next Wednesday, Bubbles, Jack smiled. I'll come up with a nickname for you, Michelle threatened. Yeah, I can't wait, Jack said. Percy was the next of his children to call Jack, complaining about his mother. Dad, please do something, Percy whined. She's only been here 2 days and Addison is already ready to kill her or me. What am I, a punisher? Asked Jack. That's what Jacqueline asked when he called her to tell her to move out of Percy's studio apartment. My apartment costs only $425 a month. You can't say you can't afford it, huh? Asked Jack. I lost my job, Jack. It's hard to rent an apartment without money, Jacqueline squealed. Jacqueline, we sold the house, Jack reminded her. We were each given a check for $42,000. Where did all this money go? She didn't answer his question, only begged him to reconsider making peace. Remember what you told me when I suggested going to the Catskills? Jack asked her. My last vacation, I said, hey, why don't we go to the Catskills? We loved it so much last time. Do you remember what you answered? No, you know I don't remember, she replied sharply. But I'm sure you remember. You said, why bother? Well, I'm telling you. Jacqueline, why bother? Reconcile. Why bother? said Jack. Penelope let her mother know that no matter how much she loved her, there simply wasn't room for her in her apartment. Besides, Mom, you hate dogs. Both Samson and Delilah were here first, Penelope said as her two Irish wolfhounds whined and demanded attention. Okay, Jack, where are you going? Jill demanded to know as he walked past her cube, holding a suit on a hanger. I'm sorry, he laughed. I don't ask you where you're going every time you leave here. Yeah, but I don't smile like that every time I leave here, she smiled. Jack knew that if he told Jill, before his first cup of coffee the next morning, every employee at St. Elizabeth's Public Utilities would know about it. Everyone knew he was divorcing Jacqueline, and they knew why. Women would come up to him and call Jacqueline a bitch, telling Jack that not all women were like that. And worse, the men either silently patted him on the back or avoided him altogether. Okay, Jill, but you don't tell anyone, Jack said. Oh, you know I won't, Jill promised, her eyes lighting up with excitement. Well, every Wednesday, after my divorce, how am I supposed to live by half, huh? Said Jack. I know, that bitch, Jill agreed. So, I work as a male model for art classes at ULD. Every Wednesday, Jack whispered. What are you doing? Jill asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. Yeah, Louisiana State University at DeGard, asked Jack. So, do they have these art classes? $100 to take your clothes off and just stand there. The first time I did that, God, I was so shy. One girl said she had run out of red paint trying to capture my blush, but hey, after that. Jack made it to his car before he burst out laughing. He was still laughing when he entered Kizzy's dance school. Okay, Hammer Jack, what's so funny? Michelle demanded, grabbing his arm. He blushed, but told her what he had told the famous gossip at his place of work. They both laughed together, covering her mouth with her hand. Well, I'd pay to draw you, she admitted as Kizzy called the class to order. Okay, Hammer Jack, are you ready? Michelle teased. Yeah, that's what all the ladies tell me, Jack replied, and Michelle instantly blushed. I didn't mean that, she screamed, slapping his hand. Problems? Kizzy smiled. Yeah, she hit me, Jack joked. You should have heard what he said, Michelle complained. I'll come up with another nickname, she promised as they danced. Whatever, Bubbles, Jack smiled and spun her around. That's it, Kizzy encouraged. Several other couples also cheered them on, and both Jack and Michelle smiled widely. You want, Jack stuttered as Kizzy announced the end of class. Michelle smiled at him. Her smile didn't make him any less nervous, but he pulled himself together and continued. Do you want to grab a cup of coffee or something? He asked. I can't, Michelle said. Remember? I'm breastfeeding. Oh hell, I didn't even think about that, Jack agreed. But how about a big glass of milkshake at Clark's? Michelle smiled, taking his hand in hers. Yeah, that sounds great, Jack agreed, smiling through his embarrassment. Shall we go in your car? Michelle decided. But when they went outside and saw Jack driving a smart car, she pushed him towards her minivan. I'm not getting into this, she said, like trying to get a basketball into a golf hole. Come on, they're a lot bigger than they look, Jack argued, but got into her minivan. She sent her parents a text saying they would be staying at Clark's. Yes, it's a date, she wrote when her mother asked. And before they could drive less than 2 miles from Kizzy's dance school to Clark's drive-in, Michelle's phone rang no less than 8 times. Do you want to answer? Asked Jack. God, no, that's my family trying to drive me crazy, she said, glancing at the display. Michelle ordered a large chocolate milkshake, and Jack decided to have vanilla ice cream with frosting. So, Jack Hare, why did you decide to take up dancing? Michelle asked as Jack watched the cute waitress roller skate around, her buttocks covered in plain red shorts. Jack Hare, huh, Jack smiled. Yes, that's what my ladies call me. God, forget it, Michelle laughed as her phone rang again. "And stop looking at all these girls in shorts," she demanded. "Oh, I was just wondering what you'd look like in them," Jack suddenly blurted out before his brain could stop him. And before she could answer, a police cruiser pulled up next to them. "Damn, really?" Michelle exclaimed as her older brother got out of the car. "Are you having problems with your phone?" Officer Richard Voisin asked his little sister. "No, I'm ignoring him, just like you." "Yes," she snapped. "Yeah," Richard chuckled. "Hi, Jack began. "Jonathan Archibald Hebert, SR." Richard interrupted. "I checked the license plates on your car." "Is it true?" Michelle screamed. "I can't even just have a milkshake." Richard pinched her nose affectionately. After Brian hurt you, right?" Richard said. Not without our checking, yes." He nodded to Jack. "Don't worry about answering the phone," he said as he prepared to walk around his car. "I already told everyone that Jack is fine." "I hate you," she shouted after him. "Yeah, and I love you too," Richard replied, opening the door. "Maybe you can bring him on Sunday." Jack laughed, and after a moment Michelle laughed too. "I'm so sorry about that," she said. "God, what an awkward first date, huh?" "In fact, I think it's a great first date," Jack said. "And that's what I'll call you," she screamed after taking a long sip of her cocktail. "Archibald, huh? Archie." "Oh, God, don't," he protested. "Oh, but Archie," she teased. Her phone rang a few more times, but she ignored it as they ate their frozen treats. When she pulled up to his car, the only one in the parking lot of Kizzy's dance school, they continued to talk quietly. Michelle saw that Jack was becoming more and more nervous. "Archie, do you want to kiss me?" she finally asked. Yeah, he admitted. And she pulled him by the front of his shirt and kissed him. "Give me your phone number. You'll come to dinner on Sunday whether you like it or not," she said after they parted. 31 messages, she asked, looking at her phone screen again. "Is it true?" With another long kiss, Jack got out of her car and opened the door to his. He smiled, waved, and drove off, leaving her with 31 text messages to answer. Jack walked into the building and Whitney, the sweet, slightly naive girl who sat at the front desk in the lobby, blushed as she greeted him. On the third floor, some women blushed, others avoided their gaze. And several men laughed. Garrett smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Jack then remembered what he said to Jill the night before and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "You won't tell anyone, will you?" he asked Jill when he saw her in the break room. "Oh, but I didn't tell," she denied, her face a mask of guilt. He passed the test that Sunday, especially because he was wearing his Saints t-shirt and khakis. And look, the man knows how to tuck his shirt into his pants, Michelle's father, Barry Voisin, told Michelle's brother. "Mr. Archie, shall we go swimming at your house again?" Amelia asked Millie Melanson. "Sorry, honey, but I don't live in that house anymore," Jack replied. Then he remembered that his apartment complex had a swimming pool. Often he returned home from work and saw various beautiful and not so beautiful bodies in and around the pool. "But my apartment has a swimming pool," he said. "Can we go for a swim in your pool?" Mandy asked. "Yeah, why not?" Jack agreed. "Do you really want to see this body in a swimsuit?" Michelle whispered. "God, yes," Jack answered emphatically. "Archie, you are such a wretch," she laughed loudly. He passed the test, especially when he told Barry and Richard that he usually went down to Red's sports bar to watch Saints games. "Oh man, they had the hottest wings, yeah. I swear you can't feel your tongue after them. Do they still have those wings?" asked Barry. "Yes," both Jack and Richard answered in unison. If anyone thought it was a little strange that Michelle's lover was 20 years older than her, no one said so. Jack and Barry were reaching for the last biscuit to moisten the last piece of rice and stew. Marie Voisin, Michelle's mother, tapped Barry's fingers with a spoon. "He is our guest. Yes, give him this biscuit," she ordered her husband. But I need this biscuit, Barry complained, patting his ample belly. Look, I'll disappear soon, yeah. Oh, well, I sure don't want that to happen. No, Jack said. Come on, take the last one. No, no, you look hungrier than me, Barry smiled widely. Okay, I'll see you on Wednesday, Jack said after saying goodbye to Michelle's 6 siblings, Millie and Mandy, her mom and dad. I have to wait a long time? Michelle asked. No, we can go straight to side by side and then to Foxtrot. We've had enough practice, huh? Said Jack. Oh, side by side? Asked Marie. Damn, Barry, why don't you take me to side by side, huh? Because I'm cheap, Barry said. We'll drive my van. I won't sit in this tiny box you call a car, Michelle said, turning her nose at his smart car. Oh, what are you talking about? It's a Mercedes-Benz, said Jack. This is not a Mercedes-Benz, Michelle laughed. Yes, it's a Mercedes-Benz, made by Mercedes-Benz, Jack said. They hugged and kissed as much as they felt comfortable in front of her whole family, and then Jack promised to be there at 6:30 the next evening. Jack was surprised at how easily he reverted to the dialect of his youth. His mother's parents spoke only a little English, mostly Cajun French. His father's parents spoke heavily accented English and switched to Cajun French when they were upset or excited. Much of the conversation at the dinner table was a mixture of English and Cajun French. When Henry Jonathan Ebert and Elise Cynthia Arnaud Ebert wanted to hide something from their children's ears, they spoke to each other in Cajun French. Little did they know that their 3 boys understood everything. Throughout school and college, Jack slowly lost the accent. As an administrator at St. Elizabeth's Public Utilities, he tried to pronounce the words clearly without using a Cajun accent. But a day at the voicing table brought him back to his heritage. He went online, found the phone number for Side by Side Steakhouse, and left a message asking for a reservation for a table for 2 at 6:45 the following evening. Even a phone call from his ex-wife didn't dampen his mood. Hey, Jack, it's me, she purred. Look at this, he said, trying not to fall back into his Cajun accent. Jacqueline made fun of the accent when she was out of sight of his parents. She also made fun of their cooking, calling it unhealthy. Despite what you all think, fat is not food, she scoffed. So Jack tried not to give Jacqueline any reason to use it against him. How are you doing? She asked. You know, I'm fine, Jack replied, feeling uncomfortable. I finally did it. I bought myself a small apartment, Jacqueline said. Oh, that's good to hear, Jack agreed. So, I thought you might want to come over, she began with a deceitful smile. What? Why? Asked Jack. Well, you know, look at the apartment. I'll make stuffed peppers, the same ones you always liked. Remember? Said Jacqueline. Jacqueline, I don't think so, Jack replied. And just like that, Jacqueline instantly lost all her false enthusiasm. She began to complain and feel sorry for herself. She added that neither of their children speak to her anymore. I mean, Deirdre, my baby, hung up. Can you imagine? She sobbed. I have a lot to do tomorrow, Jack responded. What about Wednesday? Jacqueline quickly suggested, and her tears dried up just as quickly. No, I have plans on Wednesday too, Jack said. What will you be doing? Jacqueline asked insistently. Jack thought for a moment, but then answered her with what he told Jill. I took a course at the university, brushing up on some knowledge, he said. It wasn't a complete lie. For many years he did take courses at the University of Louisiana at DeGard, and he was really brushing up on his skills. He just didn't want to tell her that he was brushing up on his dancing skills. Well, how about Tuesday then? She suggested. Yes, okay, he said. On Monday morning at 10:30, a girl named Lacey called him on his cell phone and confirmed that he had a reservation for 2 at Side by Side for 6:45 that evening. We'll be glad to see you, Mr. Ebert, the girl said in a pleasant voice. Not as much as me, Jack joked, and Lacey laughed. Michelle laughed too when Jack called her to remind her that they had a date that evening. Like I'm thinking about something else, she asked. With the words, "Love you, Archie," Michelle ended the call. Jacqueline didn't say, "I love you," until they had been dating for almost a year, and then it was in response to his own declaration of love. And Jacqueline never gave him affectionate nicknames. The only time she ever called him honey or baby was when she needed something. At 6:30 in the evening, Jack had to meet Michelle's entire family. Mom, dad, brothers, sisters, niece and nephew. She only had one nephew, Richie, as well as Miles and Mandy and Barry, who winked at him with a toothless smile. Michelle was wearing a dress that was a little too small. It was obviously her best dress, and it is obvious that it was bought for her quite a long time ago. Jack assumed that the dress had been purchased before Amelia's pregnancy. Damn, Bubbles, I need to get home and get dressed properly, Jack said, even though he was dressed in a smart black striped suit, white shirt, and blood-red tie. What? You look good, she said. Yes, but not as good as you, he replied, and she blushed proudly. Why don't you tell me that, huh? Marie asked Barry. Because then I'd say it all the time, Barry replied and kissed his wife. Oh, you're lying, she laughed and kissed him. I'll give you a police escort, Richard joked. Do this and I will kill you, Michelle threatened. Yeah, Mr. Ebert, the hostess greeted them at the restaurant. Please come here. Michelle looked around the chic restaurant with admiration. The best place Brian ever took her to was Casa Ol Mexican Restaurant. There were no prices on her menu, and she asked about it. Honey, this is so you don't have to worry about what you order, Jack said quietly. He took her small hand. Order whatever you want, he said. When are we together? You can order whatever you want, you know? Looking into his brown eyes made Michelle's knees go weak. I love you, she suddenly blurted out. Then her big brown eyes grew even larger, and her mouth opened in silent amazement. I meant, she tried to correct herself. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that because I'm in love with you too, Jack smiled. You, Michelle gasped. The ribeye was cooked to perfection, crispy on the outside and light pink on the inside. Michelle tried to eat it, but could only finish half of it. Jack finished his steak Taban, but both agreed that dessert would have to wait. At Foxtrot, Michelle happily rested against him while waltz music played. How much can change in a day, huh? Jill asked as Jack walked out of his office, dressed in his usual Wednesday clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt. Jack didn't understand. Well, yesterday you walked out of here like your dog died, Jill pointed out. And today, you have an average night smile on your face. Jack smiled widely and continued on his way to the elevator. Last night, he was at his ex-wife's apartment. Jacqueline rented a one-room apartment. It was 200 square feet larger than Jack's. The complex was good. There were no broken cars in the parking lot. The area was clean. The interior was clean and simple, with light walls and beige carpeting. The stuffed peppers weren't bad. Jacqueline made broccoli casserole to go with this dish. At the Voisin's home, they bowed their heads in prayer before the dinner madness began. From Sunday lunch, Jack began to pray, blessing his food. I'm not poisoning you. You don't need to pray, Jacqueline taunted as he bowed his head. During dinner, Jacqueline complained. She complained about the high rent, about the expensive furniture, about how boring her job in court was, about how noisy her neighbors were. And again, she brought up the topic of renewing the relationship. Did you hear me? Jacqueline asked, trying to contain the irritation in her voice. Jack finished chewing his bite of casserole, took a sip of her cloudy iced tea, and looked at her. Why did you want to cheat on me? He asked directly. What? What does this have to do with? Jacqueline stammered. It has to do with everything, Jack said. He put the napkin on the table. Jacqueline, for some reason you decided to go and sleep with Brian Melanchon. I told you not to do it. I told you I didn't like it. I told you it was costing us our marriage, but you continued anyway. The one reason you didn't do it, I somehow ruined everything. Huh. I really wasn't thinking, Jacqueline admitted weakly. I know, you really didn't think that I would resist so much. You didn't think that I would leave or get divorced. You didn't think that you wouldn't get your way like always, Jack sighed. See, Jacqueline screamed. You are as guilty as I am. You always. Jacqueline, I still haven't heard you say you're sorry, he said and stood up. You're not finished yet. You still have, Jacqueline objected. Oh yeah, I'm done, Jack said and headed towards her door. Don't call me anymore, huh? We don't have anything else to talk about. He stopped at Clark's and ordered a chili cheeseburger and a vanilla malt. I would be afraid to drive such a car, the waitress admitted, looking at his small car. Yeah, but I get 42 miles per gallon, Jack agreed cheerfully. When he returned to his apartment, he and Michelle exchanged text messages until 10 p.m. Good night, Archie, she sent him, along with a kiss emoji. Love you, good night, he replied. Love you more, was her answer. I know, he replied. He laughed when she responded with a tongue sticking out emoji. Now, on Wednesday afternoon, Jack was looking forward to dancing with his bubbles. Whitney wished him a good evening, even as her face turned red with embarrassment. A hot ham and cheese sandwich with olive dressing and a few drops of hot sauce, and Jack was ready to go. Archie, Michelle exclaimed, throwing herself into his arms. Hey, Bubbles, he smiled, appreciating her outfit. You look good, huh? They danced, Kizzy calling out the moves, correcting those who needed it and praising those who didn't. When she announced the end of class, Jack leaned over and kissed Michelle tenderly on the lips. Ah, it's Brian's weekend with the kids, Michelle said flirtatiously. What do you think? I think I want to make love to you, Jack suddenly blurted out. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. Okay, that sounds good, she agreed. On Thursday, Jack spoke man-to-man with Barry, Michelle's father. He learned that Michelle's wedding was urgent and there was no honeymoon. So Jack planned a romantic weekend. And on Friday, he left work at noon. Jack laughed. Jacqueline's Mercedes was parked in the Superior used car lot parking lot. They called them used, but even the salesman agreed they were used cars. You know what? Yes, I'll take this one, Jack agreed and bought Jacqueline's car. Then he drove to his small apartment and packed his suitcase. His good mood soured a little when he drove up to the Voicen's house and saw Brian Melanchon struggling with Barry and Mandy's baby car seats. Millie was already sitting in the front seat of the car, buckled up. Then Jack had an idea. Give it to me, he said, taking Barry from Brian. You take care of Mandy. Hello, Mr. Archie, Millie greeted him. You're not going to hit me, are you? Brian asked, scared. What? No, go ahead and take care of her, Jack said, quickly fastening the seatbelt on Barry's car seat. He then walked around the car and kissed Millie on the forehead, as well as Mandy. You have a minute, we need to talk, huh? Jack said to Brian, busy with something. How about Monday evening? Monday? No, I'm not doing anything, Brian agreed. Jack then helped Michelle with her suitcase. The journey took 2 hours. For 2 hours, it was better to do nothing than talk, get to know each other better. Michelle said Brian was Richard's friend and was always nice to her. I mean, I know I'm fat, but he always says hi to me and tells me I'm beautiful, Michelle said. Hey, you're beautiful, Jack said. And because I'm allergic to latex, Michelle said. Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say, Jack said. He pursed his lips slightly. He bought a pack of condoms. But if Michelle had a latex allergy, they would either have to abstain from sex or risk it. With the way she looked in her tight pink blouse and beige shorts, Jack hoped they would take a chance. With the way she kept squeezing his hand, Michelle was obviously hoping to take a chance too. Traffic in Baton Rouge was a nightmare, and Jack breathed a sigh of relief when they finally arrived in Gonzales. Bourbon Street was a revelation to a girl who had never been outside of Degard. Café du Monde was a real treat. Jack agreed that they would eat there every day. But when the night enveloped the city in velvety warmth, Michelle took Jack's hand and looked at him with her big brown eyes. "Let's go back to the room," she suggested. She didn't stop talking on the way to the hotel. She didn't stop talking in the creaky old elevator. And she didn't stop talking while he fiddled with the key card. He hugged her tightly, then kissed her. "Bubble, are you worried?" he asked quietly. "No," Michelle denied, and then nodded, burying her face in his chest. "You'll see me all naked, and I'm all so fat," she admitted. "And you're all so beautiful," said Jack. He didn't deny that she was fat. She was 40 to 50 pounds heavier than she needed to be, and she knew it. Any attempt on his part to deny this would look insincere, dishonest. So Jack told Michelle the truth. She was beautiful. Regardless of her weight, she was beautiful. He led her to the bed and gently pushed her. She sat on the edge of the bed and watched as he turned off the 2 lamps in the room. He then made sure the curtains were closed tightly. "Here," he said, feeling the bed until he touched it. "Now I can't see you." He kissed her deeply. "But I feel you," he whispered, letting his hand slide up and down her plump arm. "And I feel you," she whispered back. "I love you, Archie." He broke their kisses and lifted her blouse up and took it off. Then they kissed a few more times. "You're just so beautiful, Michelle," he whispered. "Why am I not Bubbles?" she asked. "Who knows?" Jack answered, and she laughed. Their kisses were passionate, loving. Brian looked nervous, anxious. Jack ordered a cup of coffee, asked the girl at the register to add condensed milk, then walked up to the table. "Hey, Brian, how are you?" Jack asked, nodding in greeting as he sat down on the bench across from Brian. Okay, what about you?" Brian muttered. "I'm not bad either. I have a pot of black beans languishing, waiting for me to get home," Jack said and blew on the coffee. So what did you want to talk to me about?" Brian began. "Why did my wife want to cheat on me?" Jack suddenly blurted out, deciding to get straight to the point. "What?" Brian was surprised. He ran through several scenarios in his head, but Jack's direct question wasn't one of the options. Jack swallowed a hot sip of coffee and put the cup on the table. "Everything she asked for, I gave her. That huge monster of a house. God, how I hated this place, but Jacqueline just had to have it. Her car, she had a pretty decent Lincoln, but she just wanted a Mercedes," he said. He looked at Brian. "I'm just trying to understand," he admitted. "I give her everything she wants, never cheated on her, never hit her, never gambled. And she just suddenly says she's going to have a little adventure, and I'm trying to understand why." "She's getting old," Brian said. "What? Me too. We're all getting old," Jack retorted. Brian raised his hand. "You said you wanted to know why, but I couldn't tell you if you kept talking," Brian said. They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Jack nodded in agreement. "She feels like she's getting old," Brian continued. "And her youngest is now out of the house, Dee or Debbie or whatever her name is." "Deirdre," Jack confirmed. "And she feels old, unused," Brian continued. He smiled and shrugged. "All it took was, wow, you look so good today, and you actually have a daughter who's old enough to go to college," and Jacqueline would smile and laugh, Brian admitted. "Damn, I always told her she looked good," Jack said angrily. "Yeah, but from you? That doesn't count," Brian said. "That doesn't mean you can't tell her that, but it just doesn't count." Brian drained his cup of coffee and looked at the counter. "Go ahead," Jack said. "Take another one." Brian did it and came back. "She basically smiles at me, flirts with me a little. It's flattering that a much younger man is paying attention to her," Brian continued. He blew on his cup, then shuddered when his lips touched the hot mug. "Yeah, it's hot," Jack agreed, sipping his coffee. That's how I got Cindy, the school secretary, Stacy, the chemistry teacher. That's who Michelle caught me with, Brian said. Both were silent for a long time. All it takes is a little attention, and they start telling you about their husband, how he doesn't give them attention, doesn't go out to eat with them, prefers to sit at home and watch TV, Brian said. He took a sip of coffee and winced slightly from the heat. You just bought yourself that smart car, Brian remembered. And all I had to do was ask her, are you still mourning the Saints' losing season? And she started telling me all your flaws. Brian shrugged. Oh, he bought himself a new car, and it's impractical. What a selfish bastard, Brian suggested. Oh, he doesn't take you dancing. He prefers to watch football. Surely he doesn't suit you in bed either, right? It doesn't matter. I work Monday through Sunday for her. Yeah, Jack growled. Most husbands do, Brian admitted. But all I have to do is suggest that it's not enough. Jack emptied his coffee mug, although by this point the coffee had already become bitter in his stomach. And Michelle fell in love with you? He asked, more to himself than to Brian. Oh, she, always such a fat little girl, all you had to do was tell her she was cute, Brian chuckled. Worst experience. He paused, remembering that he had seen Jack outside Michelle's house last Friday. So when the serpent left the Garden of Eden, he became an English teacher, Jack thought as he rose to his feet. Jack smiled tightly, said goodnight to Brian, and left Jitter's coffee shop. Jack went to his small apartment, poured out some black bean soup, and then added some more hot sauce to it. And he and Michelle sent each other text message after text message. On Tuesday morning, Jack woke up smiling. He had been smiling for a while now, but he also didn't feel like a failure, a loser. For a long time, he carried these tormenting questions within himself. Why did Jacqueline want to cheat? Was this her first betrayal? Where did he fail as a husband, as a provider? But now he saw much more clearly he had not failed. He may have gotten distracted, so to speak, but that wasn't his failure. He also realized that he felt cramped in the bachelor pad he was renting. Tonight was their 12th period. Jack signed them up for 12 more lessons and paid for both himself and Michelle, although Michelle's father, Barry, offered to contribute a little. What? Why? You're not dancing with her, Jack smiled as Millie held one hand and Mandy the other. So tell me again why we have to go to McDonald's. Because, Mr. Archie, they have burgers and fries, and you can get a milkshake and then play on the slide that they have there. Mandy patiently explained once again why they should have dinner at McDonald's. And there's a prize in the box too, Mandy agreed. Now, as Jack and Michelle twirled on the dance floor, dancing together with the ease and beauty of movement, Jack smiled at her, looking down. She smiled back at him. Her face was covered with blush from excitement and happiness. It's hard to believe that 12 weeks ago you didn't know your left from your right, Kizzy praised. The music began to fade and Jack released Michelle from his embrace. Then, as Michelle spun back, he dropped to one knee. Michelle looked at him confused. The other couples stopped and looked at Jack and Michelle as they stood in the center of the large room. Mitchell voicing, I love you with all my heart, Jack said loudly and firmly. Will you marry me? He held out a beautiful yellow gold ring with a 1-carat diamond surrounded by 4 smaller diamonds. Michelle stared at the ring, then threw herself at Jack, knocking him to the floor, kissing him uncontrollably. Oh, Archie, she screamed and laughed. The other couples applauded, laughing as Jack tried to get to his feet again. Do I take that as a yes? Kizzy joked as Michelle finally got off Jack. And you are all invited to my wedding, do you hear? Michelle ordered, not taking her eyes off her ring. Really, Dad? JJ joked when Jack called to tell him the good news. Is my stepmother younger than me? Deirdre pretended to be upset that she would no longer be the youngest in the family. Mealy assured Deirdre that being a big sister was wonderful. It's great, she explained. I can stay up a full 15 minutes longer because I'm the big sister. So, I can stay up 15 minutes longer than you, Deirdre asked, amused. Yes, Millie assured her. Dad, why do they all call you Mr. Archie? Percy asked as they all walked around Jack's new house. JJ, Shauna, holding their son Trey, Percy and his wife Addison, with an 8-month belly ready to burst, Penelope and her partner Alyssa, and Deirdre turned to hear the explanation. The first time I saw Michelle, I called her Bubbles, Jack admitted. Bubble? Alyssa asked with a cute frown in her smile. I don't know. It was so alive and bubbling. It just came out, Jack admitted. And then I found out his middle name is Archibald, Michelle said, taking his hand. And he's a huge Saints fan, Penelope nodded in understanding. Archie Manning is still the best quarterback the Saints have ever had, JJ, Percy, and Penelope echoed what they had heard their whole lives. As Miley and Mandy showed their new siblings the stakes marking where the pool would be dug, Deirdre approached her father. Sorry, Dad, I accidentally spilled the beans about your and Michelle's wedding next Saturday, Deirdre admitted. Honey, so what? I'm not going to hide this from your mom, Jack shrugged. He smiled when Millie promised Shauna to teach Trey to swim. Well, she was a little angry, Deirdre said. It's my own fault, said Jack. It's her own fault,